Welcome to Rock Your Talk with Leisa Reid. I am joined by my guest expert, Jenna McCarty. She's going to be talking about some pretty cool stuff. I'm very excited to talk with her today. And just a little bit about our show. We talk about EQ, we talk about business and how those two go together. And our expert interview series really helps to bring you 3 usable tips that you can use from the expert's perspective. Today, Jenna McCarty, our expert, founder of Juvenation, artist, songstress, songwriter, musician, poet. Am I leaving anything out? Gosh, there's so many things.
Right.
Genius. Jenna, tell us a little bit about you.
Hi, Lisa. It's good to be here. So let's see. So I've been calling myself, just to kind of simplify it, I've been calling myself a healing artist.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah. So 7 years ago, I started full-time doing the healing body work and working with people, especially who have chronic and acute pain conditions and mobility issues, things that are holding them back from living their full life inside of their bodies. And I came to that work because of my own chronic pain conditions, and this technique that I practice helped me get through that. So so as I've been working on that, I've also been working through some started exploring art and expressive poetry, which has been helpful in doing some inner work of healing. So there's outer body work, but then there's also the inner mind, heart, spirit.
It's all connected. It's all connected.
It is
right?
all connected. So
Beautiful.
Yeah.
And I know you were going to share, so you and I met probably, was it 2012 maybe? And through a mutual friend and at my house, ironically. And
Right before I started
before you
healing
started
body
your
work.
business, yeah, and you were in this completely different place of trying to figure out, what was your next step career-wise. And then we've gotten to take lots of workshops together and grow and play and learn together, which is super fun. So I'm just like so excited that you're here. And
fun to grow too. Yeah.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I know it's a pretty fun journey. And this is all through productive learning. That's what brought us together, productiveLearning.com, and that self-mastery and how do you, intellectually and emotionally, take what's in here and then create what it is that you want out there. So
Right.
it's been super fun to play with you in that regard.
Transformative work.
Yeah, it is. So tell us I know you have some tips that you wanted to share with us from your perspective. Tell us a little bit about what you got.
Yeah. Well, you asked us to come up with three tips. So I came up with 3 that seemed to kind of hold. So the first one is simply breathe. And I know, of course, we talk about breath a lot, but the breath is a really important cue for us. When you notice your breath gets shallow, your heart's racing, and you can't get the breath in deep.
I can totally relate. Like even when you said just breath, I was like, oh yeah. And like I noticed that I was a little bit like holding my breath, and it's not a holding my breath like I'm not breathing at all, but it is a tense, like shallow breath. Yeah. So I'm like, oh, and I can like, right. So everyone could just
yeah. And honestly, the breath, with the virus, right? The breath is a big impact of this virus, and it's also very connected to stress and anxiety. And the more stressed and anxious we are, the weaker our immune system is. And so to create conditions of strong immunity and health within us, simply slowing down our breath and it calms our whole nervous system. And that is one simple way to help us be more healthy.
I agree. And sometimes it's the simple things that are most powerful. Like everybody can do it. It's free. You can do it anywhere at any time, no matter if you're inside or sheltering in place, or if you've managed to step outside for a necessary, what is it, essential task, then
Yeah.
you can still do that. And even if you had a mask on, you could do that. You could still breathe.
Yeah, which I don't know if you've gotten to wear these masks yet. I've
My first experience was
gotten
yesterday.
okay. It's different wearing a
Different.
mask over your face.
It sure is.
I'm giving treatments to some people whose risk of chronic pain is meeting or exceeding their risk from the virus, and so we're wearing masks, and just you have to. It can feel kind of claustrophobic
It
in
is.
there, and so just again calming the whole system and slowing the breath and remembering, okay, the air is coming through.
Yes.
Even though it's not as free flowing as we like it to be, if we can kind of calm ourselves down in that and just trust, okay, that air is coming through, it's going to be okay. Talking ourselves into that, slowing the breath, it helps calm the whole system.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I know it's a lot of, if we refer to that book, Who Moved My Cheese, like a lot of cheese is getting moved this last couple of weeks, where tasks that were not, just have always kind of been habitual, like going to the grocery store, is now just so different for a lot of people. So
Yeah.
I get that. Well, thank you. So perfect. So everyone, remember to breathe. Let's use this time to do that. And take a big deep breath.
Slow, long, deep breath.
Love that.
So then the second tip that I would give is to really kind of falls after that breath. So feel what you're feeling. Noticing what is going on inside, whether it's that the breath is shortened and the anxiety is rising, or boy, if there's beneath that, there's oftentimes a grip of anxiety about loss, about this impending crisis that's kind of been upon us and growing for so long. The uncertainty leaves us in a state of kind of anticipating loss, which is a form of grief. And that's one of those feelings that I think a lot of us are our immediate reaction, which is often very unconscious, is just to turn that off and fix it before we've even thought about it or felt it. Which leaves it there balled up, and it just kind of intensifies. So if you take the time to feel what you're feeling, this is Euphrates, feel what you're
Let your
feeling.
inner cat out.
Right, let your inner cat out. And rather than suppressing it. And often then when it has space to be felt, it begins to dissipate, and the strength and power of it over us starts to dissolve or soften.
I love that. One of the things I did recently, and this is courtesy of Cassie Crow, who is amazing. She's one of our trainers at Productive Learning, and we talk about having a deliberate temper tantrum. And I was like, I want to have that. And I was like, totally like in this space. It was Friday night, and I think it was just the whole week of being on Zoom and being just not being able to do the things that I typically do. And I was like, I can't take it anymore. And I'm like, I'm going to have a deliberate temper tantrum. And I just like it was really short actually, but I just, moaned out loud and whined and complained. Just to feel that irritation, like instead of trying to calm down and whatever, I'm like, no, I want to let this irritation or anger or upsetness be released. And it was in a safe place. No one was victim to my tantrum. But to do it deliberately was kind of fun. It was just fun. And I'm like, oh, okay. And the energy was able to pass through. And I could laugh at myself and the situation and just have this different experience.
Yeah. Well, and I think I think that to be able to have that experience, it takes some practice for a lot of
Probably, yes. Well, I think a lot of times we're having
people. Very
unconscious temper
few people
tantrums.
are able. Yeah, right. Most of us are having unconscious resistance in some way that might show up like a temper tantrum, and then some of us, the temper tantrum is so deeply suppressed that it's kind of, there's numbness over that, and there's
Yeah.
all the responsibility that we immediately jump into fixing.
Mhm.
And but being able to get down to that level, that's a boy, the relief that comes when we can express those feelings and emotions is it's very healing.
It
Very
was,
healing work.
and again, don't, I'm not recommending you harm other people in this
No throwing plates
practice. Yeah.
across the room.
As long as it's safe, but yeah. But when I really appreciated what you said about feeling the feeling instead of trying to like stop it and suppress it before it gets out. Because there's this, uh, the ability to let it come through, that emotion to come through. And, it's, 90 seconds of having that emotion. And then, oh, that emotion was able to come through. And now I'm able to come back to center. This is how it is for me. Come back to center and truly be more grounded and truly be more
Mhm.
present and grateful and all those, the more desirable emotions that I prefer. But if I'm trying to like push the irritation underneath and deny it and just get over it, and um, it sort of festers for me in that space, and then it seeps through in more unconscious temper tantrums that could be passive aggressive or hiding or shouting or whatever,
Right. Right.
snapping. And that's not how I want to show up. So I think finding your own um, recipe for that is part of the process, right?
Mhm.
Part of the journey.
Yeah. Well, I think some of the kind of the beginner steps in that is starting by just kind of putting the finger on the pulse of the emotional being, the emotional state, and starting by just trying to name what's in there. And it's oftentimes really ambiguous initially,
Yes.
and just naming it a big bundle of emotions is a starting place.
Mm-hmm.
um, and at least that's where I've had to start in my work, because it was just so bottled up and such a huge tangle of emotions that felt just untenable and dangerous to go into. It felt like this
Yeah,
bottomlessness to it. um, but
I
even naming that was helpful.
I agree with you. And it's interesting to hear, because I'm so fascinated. We've never had this particular conversation, but for me, it was like, I remember feeling like it's so dark, I can't even see my hand in front of me. Like when people
Mhm.
would say, well, you should feel your feelings, and what do you feel in your body? And how do you feel right now? I'm like, I got nothing. Like I
Yeah.
had that numbness. I know we had that in common in some aspects, but it wasn't a fear of going to it. It was just really like, I don't even know what my choices are. Like it was
Mhm.
blacked out because I had
Mhm.
been living that way for so long. So like for me, it was kind of like, well, how do you feel it? And what do you give me some examples? And like, and noticing it, I would notice, I remember the first time I felt really embarrassed, like this humility just coming through me. I know this is going to sound strange to maybe some of our listeners, but um, do I want to feel humiliated? No, that is not my favorite emotion. However, I remember, even in the midst of my humility, feeling excited because I could feel it.
Mm.
Like, I'm like, okay, wow, I feel like, the heaviness in my chest, or that I'm feeling red, or like I'm feeling this sunken, like I could feel the physicality of that feeling.
Mhm.
Whereas before I would have been like, well, whatever, moving on. And I wouldn't have really experienced it. And then it would have just gotten probably locked away somewhere, like you're saying, just like, okay, put that in the closet. Don't ever open that door again, And this way, when I was able to feel it and appreciate that feeling, I was like, oh, wow, like like Pinocchio, like I'm a real boy,
Yeah. Well, and
We got a little off topic, but just
no, not at all. I mean, I think that's absolutely it. And there's a lot of cultural reinforcement to this bottling up of emotions.
totally.
I think um, I heard some different members of my family talking about packing heavy emotions into a box and locking it away. In fact, one person said, not only lock it away, but send it out into the middle of the sea where it would never be found again. And I was like, wow, that's like Davy Jones's locker, right? Send those to the bottom of the sea. But honestly, that sea is the inner being. And when we're putting it down there and then you have an accumulation, it builds up of emotions that are bottled up and locked so away that becomes quite burdensome.
Then we have that island of trash, right? That's in the middle of our ocean right now of like 12 feels long. It's like it's gonna come to this if we go stick with that metaphor. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think you're right. It is cultural, and I think we're luckily coming around in some ways. Like I know we both have kids in the same age bracket, and they are starting to teach about, you know, not that they ever taught emotions at all, but coming from it, like, this is how do you express this? How do you feel? What is this feeling? And these are your feelings. And this is how it could, you know, and having those conversations in the schools are really, I think that's amazing. I'm glad that we're doing that. And it's starting to be more of a conversation for everybody that emotional intelligence is, I tell people all the time, it's like, it's called emotional intelligence because we need to also address our emotions and what's going on.
Absolutely.
Within.
Yeah. Well, and I think as parents, we've, the level of the number of kids committing suicide has been on the rise for a far too long, and we need to take it seriously. It's life and death.
Yeah, absolutely. Very serious. And I know you had another tip for us too.
I do. Yes. So number 3. So what I wrote is set goals, but be reasonable and understanding. And I kind of want to expand that a little bit to having a vision. Mm-hmm. So not only setting goals for what we're going to do in a day, but seeing what do I want to have come into being? And then what is it? How do I want to be in this moment? And then how do I want to be in my life going forward? And then setting the goals that align with that. But at the same time, being really understanding. So having a vision, but really being okay with where we are at present. Mm-hmm. And at present, a lot of us have been having to make huge adaptations. And the number of shifts and changes that we're doing are so many more than what we've probably counted on our checklist. Like having to figure out working from home, having to figure out how to oversee kids who are not going to school, whose lives are turned upside down, who have no peers to be hanging out with. So the number of changes and adaptations are enormous. And I think we need to really be gentle with ourselves and flexible with our expectations.
Yeah, it's almost like
I realized the first week.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Okay, I'll tell this. And then the first week that we were on stay home order, mm-hmm. I had the biggest to-do list. It was like I was expecting like 3 or 4 or 5 years worth of work to all of a sudden get done. I had to completely reset that.
You're like, wow, Rome does not need to be built all today. Yeah.
Right.
You know, Mark, my husband, same thing. He was like, we're going to get all this stuff done. I'm like, we have a while. So, I mean, not that I want to dampen your enthusiasm, but doesn't all have to happen today. But I get that where we're, I can really relate to that as well. And in getting adjusted to, I think we've had a lot of conversations about like, okay, well, how do we want to do this? Like, there's definitely times where I've worked at home before, not Monday through Friday, but a couple days a week here and there. And sometimes Mark's home, but usually he's not. And so now it's like, how do we navigate both being here and I think transparent and quick communication has been a great way for us to navigate being in the same space all the time together. You know, it's like, oh, hey, can we talk about this dynamic and how do you want to play moving forward? And well, this is working for me, but this doesn't work for me. And being okay with having that quick communication. My dad always says, be honest quicker. That's a good his tip in relationships. Like,
I
yeah,
like that.
yeah. It's like, instead of like letting it fester, and we're together more now as couples and spending more time together feasibly. So it's like, when you let it go, it's a little more damaging than than taking care of something quicker.
Yeah. And along with that, the taking care of things quickly, but also setting reasonable boundaries for the whole of life, right? We've got, now we're living all of life pretty much at home.
Yeah.
So it's easy to kind of either be all work and working 24/7, or the opposite and just like, oh, Netflix, I got nothing. Let me
Yeah.
And so finding those balances, but then also the inner work. And if we've got families, some of us have families we're with, so connecting and making family time that's outside of the work time, the solo time, all of that. I find it's needing to be even more intentional in a way.
Right. Yeah, I agree. Because otherwise everyone could just kind of be on their devices alone. And we decide, and that's what I mean about like coming together and negotiating things. Like, I had noticed there was a couple things about dinner that I won't go into the whole details, but I was like, okay, can we agree that, and I threw an idea out there. Can we agree that at dinner we do this? And we all emerge from our said places and come together and prepare together, whether it's someone sitting at the table, someone's cooking, someone's cleaning, whatever, but we're together at that time. We decide to put everything else away and just come to and maybe there's families who've been doing that already, but now it's like meeting to be more, like you said, intentional, deliberate about how do we as an entity want to play right now.
Right.
And being able to renegotiate or say, hey, let's try this for a couple days and see how it works. And then is everybody getting what they need? So that's, yeah, to me, like the increased level of communication is very helpful.
Yeah. Even with, well, that
anyway, we could talk about further. Right. Yeah. And I know you had a personal challenge that you're kind of in the middle of right now in terms of a podcast, right? Tell us a little bit about your podcast.
Yeah, so I'm on day 19 of I've made a 21-day commitment.
Nice.
To creating a daily podcast. I gave myself a little reprieve over the weekend, and I'm not beating myself up about it. But it's called Set Loose the Vision.
Set Loose the Vision.
Yes.
Is it on iTunes?
It's all over the place. It's
everywhere.
Starting on Anchor. And it's on iTunes and Spotify.
People can find it. Okay.
If you look for me, Jenna Wadsworth McCarty, you'll find it.
Okay.
But it's really been a process of looking at where do I want to go, but also where am I now, and being attentive to those blocks. It's a lot of the work we do in our productive learning work. Looking at resistances and looking underneath to really try and understand what's in the resistance and how to shift and change and get growth. And then looking back and celebrating the growth, and then continuing that cycle again, looking forward, seeing what's blocking, moving the blocks, and stepping forward into action.
Oh, I love that. That sounds so powerful. I'm so proud of you. And I know, like, I just want to say, like, what an honor it is to see all the work that you're doing. I know you're talking about the podcast right now, and just because I know you personally, and if we think even just 3 years ago, I don't remember when you started with your artwork, because Jenna does this amazing artwork as well, like this beautiful, beautiful pieces that are just stunning. And I think was your first one 3 years ago? About?
The first big one was 2015.
Okay, so 5 years ago. And then it started to really snowball, and you brought in you've been writing poetry, but then you brought that in, and you brought in your songs, and you've created, I mean, you've really created a lot in just the last few years. So sometimes people think like, oh, well, one day I'll be able to, and one day, and then maybe, I've always had a dream to do this, but you're doing it. Like, you had those dreams. And then I remember, I think it's okay to share that you had resistance around doing that and putting yourself out there and being seen, and look at you now, like, oh, like you are seen and heard. And I love it.
What's interesting, Leisa, I think that I've finally realized that when the resistance is flaring, it's a sign you're on the right track.
Yes.
And so all the stepping forward and trying to share what I need to share, what's my voice in that, and the resistance that comes up, the self-defeating thoughts, that shut down over the years.
Yeah.
When that's flaring, I know that's what I'm needing to work on.
Yeah, that's so powerful that you're able to even notice that about yourself and still move through it. Because that's usually where people would be like, oh, okay, this is uncomfortable. I don't want to do this anymore. I don't like this. Someone might not like it, or whatever, whatever those voices are. That and for you to hear that and then go, got it. I'm gonna still.
It's not quite as simple as just that.
There's the end result. There's steps in between, right?
Oh gosh, I go into the whole spinning cycle, and what have I done? And every single collage I make, and even with the podcasts too. When I'm writing or recording the podcast, I get to this point where I'm like, "What are you doing? You've ruined the whole thing!" And I'm so sure it's just trash. I'm gonna have to delete it and start over. Or with the collage, I'm gonna have to throw it out, and it's done. And then I calm myself. I focus on my breathing. I feel what I'm feeling.
There you go.
And
stay the course. Set the vision loose.
Yeah, exactly.
I love it. That's so beautiful. Well, I'm so glad that you're in my life and that I'm in yours, and
yes, me too.
that our worlds intertwined. And I couldn't be happier for you. I know that you are and will continue to inspire lots of people. And I'm thrilled for you, and I'm proud to be your friend.
The feeling is mutual, Leisa. I'm so glad to have this journey together. In lieu of a hug.
I know, right? Virtual heart, whatever that is. Well, I'm gonna. Jenna and I could talk all day. We know that you all have things to get back to, but if you want to check out Jenna's podcast, it's Set Loose the Vision. It sounds like you can find that on lots of different places. You can find Jenna on Facebook and Instagram. Yeah. It's Jenna, Jenna, Wadsworth, Wadsworth. McCarty. Oh, I'm going to have to spell all three words. McCarty. So, and I'll put all that in the notes for everybody. So you'll see her name and you can find her pretty easily. So thank you, Jenna, for being one of our experts on our interview series. And for all of you watching out there, be good to yourself and be good to someone else too. We'll see you soon.